placing the interest on the meditation object and then allowing the interest to rest there, to stay there. One challenge that many modern people have is with thinking. Obviously you're coming to work, probably things you need to think about. And it's important not to be disheartened when you meditate and you notice thinking. What we try to do in meditation is that we have a different relationship with thought. So whereas you would follow on with a thought and another thought, thoughts lead on to one another. In meditation you're giving the interest to the feelings of the breathing, and when a thought arises you're just knowing a thought as a thought and training in not picking it up, not continuing on with it, and this is actually valuable. So you shouldn't feel that meditation isn't successful when there's thinking. To know that you are thinking, to be mindful, aware that there is thought. This is an important part of training, because we can become more mindful of our thoughts. So we are aware as a thought arises and we don't follow on, we allow it to cease. Keep coming back, returning to the feelings of the breathing. As mindfulness develops, you'll tend to simply notice. This is a function of mindfulness, it notices. Sati sampajanya, mindfulness with clear comprehension. You'll notice whether the content of the thought is skillful, neutral or unskillful. Something important to notice. This is simply the function of mindfulness. It has a sense of context, perspective. It knows wholesome and unwholesome. Sometimes translated as truth discerning awareness, sati sampajanya, seeing things according to their characteristics. A thought is just a thought, a feeling is just a feeling, the body is just a body, not mine, not I, not self, not other. Aware of one in-breath, aware of one out-breath. In the Thai tradition we're using the word Buddho, synonym for the Buddha. The Buddha, the one who was awake, aware, enlightened, liberated. When we use these syllables, it's a skillful way to use the thinking mind. It helps to gently restrain thought from flowing off into thoughts about the past or the future or other people, other places. So we do this by breathing in. We have the mental recitation in the mind, gently, Bud. And breathing out, we have the mental recitation, Do. Mindfully knowing, awake, aware. And breathing in, Bud. Breathing out, Do. Aware of the feelings of the natural breathing. Using the mantra word Parikamma Buddho, breathing in Bud, mindfully aware, breathing out Do. For the last few minutes of the meditation we can do some metta bhavana, bringing the awareness to the chest area, aware of the feelings of the in and out breathing in the area of the chest. With metta, you are offering an attitude of loving friendliness, of kindness, of care. Often there's a quality of judging, commenting on experience, comparing. Sometimes a withholding of kindness. So with metta, you're wishing good for oneself. When breathing in, you make the wish, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. In the initial stages of the metta practice, it's important to offer a quality of acceptance. We can all make improvement in our practice, in our life, but with regards to the metta practice, one starts with allowing things to be exactly as they are, this body, this mind. And then generating goodwill, kindness, friendliness. Breathing in, may I be well. Breathing out, may I be happy. Allowing the warmth of goodwill to arise in the heart area, spread into the chest area. May I be well. May I be happy. And breathing in, may I be well, may I be happy. Breathing out, may I be free from suffering. We can give a little thought of what it would mean to be truly well, to be truly happy. In our daily life, that might mean focusing in the ways we need to focus to fulfill our duties, maintain good health, good mental health, and also to make the time to meditate, promoting a sense of balance, a sense of clarity, a sense of presence, presence of mind. If we consider what makes us not well, it's these influences of greed, of anger, irritation, aversion, of delusion. And so in wishing ourselves well, we are aspiring to weaken the influence of these qualities and uproot attachment. The result of that is a heart that feels less weighed down, less pushed around by these worldly concerns, worldly energies. So wishing oneself to be truly well and truly happy. And just spend another minute or so breathing in, may I be well, breathing out, may I be happy. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. There's about a little more than 20 minutes just now. So among workers on this planet at this time, I believe you are fortunate people. Your company and your bosses respect Buddha Dhamma, and I hear that it's a part of your life that you meditate for 15 minutes when you come to work. This is, of course, how it should be. Unfortunately, it's not normally the way it is, but it's a very good thing. And also allowing the opportunity to listen to Dhamma, discuss Dhamma with Venerable monks. That's a very good thing. Also, this company isn't involved in liquor or harming animals or harming beings, so you have a right livelihood, samma ajivo, jobs that don't create bad karma. This is also not so easy in this day and age. So I'm happy for you. You have a good job, good bosses, and I'd like to give the opportunity if anybody has any questions about their practice and how to integrate practice into daily life, these kind of things. We're happy to try to help if we can. My name's Ajahn Achalo, been a bhikkhu for 22 years. Ajahn Pavaro has been living with me for 6 or 7 years. He is from Canada. He's been a bhikkhu for 16 years. And we each practice meditation every morning, every afternoon, every evening, every day, and have been doing this for quite some time. So if you have any questions, we try to help. If you don't have any questions, maybe you'd just like to meditate more.
Sir, can I ask a question, please?
Oh yes, you may.
You mentioned that you take a deep breath, you hold it, then you concentrate.
No. Natural, normal breath.
Normal breath.
You're just aware of it.
Okay.
You don't hold it.
You don't hold it.
Yeah. So you're aware as the breath comes in and leaves the body. You're just placing awareness of that. Don't hold anything.
Don't hold anything.
Yeah.
And when you breathe out,
similar. You're just observing.
you just observe it.
You're just observing, yes. And you're giving the interest to those feelings rather than to other things. And I don't even really like the word concentration. I prefer the word giving interest, giving attention. And concentration is what occurs after some time. But if as soon as you start to meditate, you try to concentrate the mind, there's too much willfulness in that. And what you're trying to do is allow the mind's natural state of clarity and awareness to become present by putting other things down. It takes time. So you're just giving the interest to those feelings, placing the interest, and then the mind comes to settle on that itself. Ajahn Chah uses the analogy of there's a type of chicken coop in northeast Thailand which is made of rattan, and you place the coop over a chicken so that it doesn't run away. And so what happens is the chicken will scratch and run around in circles and make some noise, and eventually it will sit down by itself. But if you try and hold the chicken in place, the chicken gets very upset. So you do that. You just place this kind of general broad awareness, aware of your body, aware of your mind, and you just gently keep inclining the mind to be aware of the feelings of the breath without controlling, just giving attention. Yeah, and then your mind can become quite still. I like the word collected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, the mind in a normal state is scattered. It has divided attention. And so we just stop doing that. We stop scattering the attention. And we just give the attention to one thing, and then the collectedness is what happens by itself, because the mind isn't flowing outwards. And then you feel energized and refreshed, because sending the mind out is tiring. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's more question about... I noticed we did Metta Meditation towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, my previous notion, I haven't done it much. I usually do breath meditation. But my previous notion, one thing I noticed was that you mentioned for my happiness, that kind of thing. Most of the time I thought Metta meditation was for outward happiness.
Yes, so if you don't have a genuine quality of loving kindness, genuine self-care, self-interest, how are you going to radiate that outwards? If there's something in here which isn't full of goodwill, it's like if you have a satellite dish or a phone tower emitting microwave rays. I mean, it has to come from that. It has to come from that place. A lot of you people are into IT, so your Wi-Fi router, whatever analogy. The energy has to be there to be able to flow out. So a lot of people have a withholding of goodwill to themselves, because it is the case that we have weaknesses and we have faults and we have to do better. So that's true. But it's like if you have a dog and you only scold it, it's going to be a very miserable dog, So there's a time for just being nice to the dog, even if it's a naughty dog. And then you'll find that the dog becomes very happy. It's like it's a simple thing. I mean, one has to have healthy self-care, healthy self-interest, in order to be able to truly care for other people. So in Tibetan Buddhism, they use the word self-cherishing. Self-cherishing is more like selfishness and thinking that you're better than other people. But when you're putting your interests above others, or sometimes harming others because taking care of your needs and not considering the needs of others, so that's self-cherishing. But healthy self-care is you have to function the healthy stewarding of this self, conventional self, so that you can take care of your life. And if you really care for yourself, it's a very deep practice actually. So we just went through the initial step. What one does in metta, if I was to lead a 1-hour metta meditation, is then you would move on to people that you find it easy to have goodwill towards. Then you would move on to people that you feel somewhat indifferent towards, kind of people that acquaintances that you don't know well but you just see, and could be the cleaning people or the taxi people or the people you pass on the street or sit on the bus, etc. And then you move to include difficult beings, people who you've had some challenges and conflicts with, or harmful people, and then eventually all beings. So it becomes not concerned with just this self as a practice. But in terms of having a real metta for oneself, this sensitizes the mind in a very important way. You become very sensitive to what is a wholesome energy to have in your heart, a wholesome attitude. The Lord Buddha calls it divine abiding, the Brahma Vihara. That becomes like a mirror, and you recognize unwholesome more quickly and more. And then the other thing is, you won't want to cause harm to yourself. So when these issues come up about breaking precepts, ethical precepts, if you genuinely understand that that's harmful to you, and you genuinely, deeply, truly wish yourself well, then it's easier not to do it. So often if the mind's in a kind of a heady space, it will justify. You can take a kind of legalistic view at keeping precepts, what I can get away with, and what I have to keep, the rules I have to keep, but the stuff I can get away with. But if you're coming from a more heart space of a genuine sense for what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, and a genuine sense for what's going to ultimately serve your best interest, when that decision comes up, you don't want to do it because you don't want to harm yourself. So it's very important, and also it makes us more accepting and less judgmental of other people as well. So we still have to do our duties. I'm also kind of in my own monastery, I'm the boss as well. Sometimes you have to admonish people, you have to discipline people, have to scold people, but it's coming from caring for the situation, caring for them as well. And if you can, when it comes time to have to discipline others or scold others, if that is also coming from a caring space, it's much better karma. You're not coming out of anger. You're coming out of fulfilling your duty skillfully.
One more follow-up. How do you prevent that loving kindness toward yourself from becoming vanity?
Yeah, so I think following on with these subsequent steps. So it starts with you. But once you start to include your friends, your family, your teachers, all of your work colleagues, everybody, including ISIS bombers and Tamil tigers and, everything, then it's humbling. In my experience, it's very humbling to genuinely wish goodwill even to your enemies. You can't. In my experience, it doesn't make a person vain. In my experience, it makes you quite humble. So, because you can't hold on to a angry judgment. You have to give. In order to be able to accomplish that, you have to look at the universality of the experience of suffering, and then you understand that actually, the ISIS bomber had some serious suffering, and so did the Tamil bombers, and so does a corrupt politician or whatever. Even if their suffering is simply because they're weighed down by kilesa, greed, hatred and delusion, that actual experience, to have a mind which is full of anger and ill will, is very unpleasant. So when you're looking at that experience and you're wishing that person to be free from that experience, it's very humble. And it also, it kind of points to the universality of experience. So if everybody still has a lot of suffering, but their deeper potential is to be free from suffering, and that's what we're wishing for people ultimately, then there's no one special in that. Or everybody's equally special, let's put it that way, in as much as they all share the same potential. And so yeah, I personally find it a very powerful practice for impartiality and for recognizing that you're not that special. We all share this. We all share this specialness. And I think if you only did loving kindness to yourself and you stopped there, then okay, that could be problematic. But we don't stop there. So. Okay, so this is just, this is for me, I find, if I'm leading a guided meditation, because I do several, sometimes many hours of meditation a day, I also want to meditate. So the inclination of my mind will be to go to my breath. If I go to my breath, then I'm not going to be talking to you. So what happens is, for me, this just helps me think the next thought as a little bit of activity. So it's like I'm just kind of, and I can feel the feelings. And I find that when I'm giving a Dhamma talk, that if I do this, the thoughts flow. But if I put it down, I'll go to my breath. So when I'm meditating in my kuti, I don't use these. So I also find this helpful in busy public situations, like if you're in an airport or a train station. We're aware of the footsteps, but that's a long way away, and there's all this visual stuff happening. So I kind of synchronize my footsteps with beads, and I do Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. It keeps the mind in the body. So I also sometimes do that Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho, this body contemplation. So did you experience more fear since you had these recent bombings? Has that been... Do you feel frightened? Yeah. Metta is a very powerful protective force as well. So for people who practice metta, the chances of being in that kind of situation are much less. we look at the benefits of cultivating loving kindness. One is that devas protect you. And that can have interesting, how that manifests is quite interesting. That could just manifest as an intuitive feeling and not to go somewhere one day. Kind of, don't go there today, go here instead. These kind of things. And it is a scary age that we're living in. It's part of our shared karma. And I think if you look at it in terms of statistics, it's still fairly safe times that we're living in compared to medieval times, for example. One of the downsides of news being global is that you do get this constant tirade of bad news that gives the impression that the world's an incredibly dangerous place and horrible things are happening everywhere all the time. But if you actually look at statistics, kind of even in America, where you hear of all these school shootings and things, that the actual general homicide rate is quite a lot lower than it was a few decades ago. If you look at it, over 330 million people. So obviously you don't want to go to the most dangerous places, but in general, the world's not as dangerous as it might appear if you look at the news. I actually don't recommend watching much news because it gives a kind of a distorted perspective on the world. Like if you actually look at your office, your neighbours, your city, how things are generally functioning, it's probably pretty good. But if you get paranoid about these isolated incidents, then it's not really balanced. It's also important to be aware that it could happen. So that's our death reflection. We have to be willing, we have to be ready to go. If it is today, to be ready to let go to the degree that we can. And we had some security. Ajahn Pabra and Prabhata arranged security for us. So very, very nice plainclothes police people. And they enjoyed spending time with the monks. They said they're usually with politicians and just kind of meditating, chanting, offering flowers. And I wanted to say to them, if we do die, don't worry, we died happily. We won't think that you didn't do your job. But then I thought, no, they'll think the Ajahn has a death wish. I won't say anything. So we're on pilgrimage. So if you die on pilgrimage, I think you get to be born in Tushita heaven. So could be worse. But we're not wishing to die. So had some lovely experiences meditating at the Sri Mahabodhi tree and the Ruan Wela Saya Chedi and the Tuparama, is it? Chedi, yes, and the cave where Mahinda Thero meditated. And we meditated at Jetavana Monastery and did some chanting at Abhayagiri Monastery. And then we visited this very old temple in Colombo. That was very moving. For us, we both were talking about later, it's like stepping into a different century. It's still so much like it's been. Families, grandmothers with grandkids, walking on the sand, and it's very beautiful. When Ajahn Pabra commented yesterday, these days in Thai temples is full of Thai people not dressed properly taking pictures of themselves. It's a very kind of depressing, or at least for a monk, it's depressing. They seem to be having a nice time, but... Still also kind of feel close to nature somehow. Sri Lanka, you have so many big trees around, so still kind of connected to the earth in a nice way. And 65 million people in Thailand, it's quite badly deforested now, mostly farms, and they don't leave any trees, they just... So we were offered some land, we had to make our own forest. The forest monks, and which is coming along very nicely now because we get a lot of rain and it's quite hot. So many of the trees that we planted 9 years ago are 7-8 meters tall already. So they grow very fast. They were 50 centimeters when we planted them. So it's Does Sri Lanka have this temporary ordination tradition? In Thailand this is quite big, civil servants and will become a monk for a month or for 3 months, and it's socially acceptable in Thailand to become a monk and disrobe. It's up to 7 times. So not necessary, of course. If you do an intensive meditation retreat, it's the same thing, isn't it? You keep the 8 precepts as the foundation. It's very similar. Thais believe that the merit of becoming a bhikkhu is auspicious, so they want that merit. In a future life, they can become a monk for longer. So. Do some of your staff do these retreats when monks come through, like Ajahn Brahmali, and they get the... Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay. Yeah, very good. It's a nice place, huh? Very clean. If you meditate at home before you come to work in the morning, that will be even added benefits for your clarity and presence of mind as you work, and also just the general principle that delusion and ignorance is a dark quality, and generating mindfulness is a brightening, kind of washes away the darkness of delusion. So it's really, Ajahn Sumedho often says, mindfulness is the path to the deathless. I was talking yesterday about the 5 spiritual powers, one of which is mindfulness, where Lord Buddha says these 5 powers lead to the deathless, merge in the deathless, and deathless meaning nibbana. Of course, he says the same phrase about 4 foundations of mindfulness. These 4 foundations of mindfulness, when cultivated, made much of, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So it's a very powerful quality. It's very much about placing the mind on a wholesome object and not picking up unwholesome ones or putting them down more quickly. And then that innate nature of the mind to be clear and aware is able to shine forth. But we do have to put effort into it. And the more we do, the more there will be more clarity. And I think for most people who have a daily meditation practice, you can notice what your mind feels like on the day that you don't meditate. You can see a distinct difference. There's a sense of it being duller, dirtier. And then if you really see the benefits of meditation, there's a natural inclination to meditate more. You see, it's a helpful thing. And how many bhikkhus are there in Sri Lanka now? Do you know approximately? Is there a no? Yeah. Do they keep statistics? The government probably has some statistics somewhere. I'm not sure. Yeah. In Thailand it's about 200,000 I think in Burma it's about 300,000. And, let's see. So we're going to Kandy today, first time. Pay respects to the Buddha's tooth relic. Many people have told me their favorite place is the Ruan Walasaya. Seems to be very powerful. And did you say that was your favorite one as well? Yeah. It's nice. Yeah. Ajahn Pabra and I both spent a lot of time, our good fortune, we've spent a lot of time in Bodh Gaya at the Mahabodhi Chedi. So in recent years I've gone there for 6 weeks at a time and practiced 10 hours of meditation a day. I was trying to clock up 3,000 hours of meditation under the Bodhi tree, which I have done now. I did complete that vow. And yeah, maybe we can do 1,000 at the Ruan Willas. I like it there. So. I know. It's easier to meditate longer, at least once you have some meditation skills. It's easier to meditate in a place with a lot of blessings. It's you like getting some help, but it also took some time. I started doing 6 hours a day, and I had to go back to my room, my space, because of all the noise, and then got up to 8.5, and it was really difficult to get past 8.5 to 10. So just that sense of being impinged upon by the crowds, the noise, the heat, the mosquitoes, but keeping on practicing, and you find that kind of resistance swells up in the mind, and it just falls away. It's like if you've made a vow, you have to do 2.5 hours 4 times a day, and you've made that vow and you have to keep it. And suppose you get irritated and grumpy at 45 minutes, but you still have, an hour and a quarter to go. Is no more than an hour and 3/4 to go. What happens is you have to sit with that for a period of time, but what you learn about the mind is that it can't hang on to any reaction forever. It gets bored of its reaction, or it kind of surrenders. Okay, and then the mind can find a very peaceful, serene space by just being willing to let it go. And then when it falls away from the mind, you let it go. So it's that's intensive practice, probably advanced practice, but it's enjoy it. It's you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the nature of mind, like why is it possible to be in a noisy, crowded, hot space with mosquitoes and be perfectly serene and tranquil, and then in the very exact same space with the exact same phenomena to be very irritated? Right? Just kind of look. So what's occurring actually is that the mind is reacting. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the place, and then you have enough insights into the fact that you don't have to react, or if you have reacted, you can drop the reaction. You learn a lot about the nature of what a mind is, and how to train it, and how to not believe it. So you can have thoughts and you have your reactions, but your relationship to that changes. So it's like you're just waiting it out until it passes by itself. You don't believe it. You're not committing to believing a negative reaction. You're just kind of aware, okay, there's a negative reaction, and you're aware that if I don't pick it up, it'll fall away. Ajahn Sumedho was sweeping leaves at Wat Pah Pong, and he was irritated. And Ajahn Chah, his teacher, my teacher's teacher, came and asked Ajahn Sumedho, "Where's the suffering? Is it in the leaves? Is it in the broom?" I was like, "No, it's in your mind," because it's quite a peaceful forest. And then he pointed to a log in the forest. He said, "So, do you think that log's heavy, Sumedho?" "Oh, yeah, that looks like a heavy log." And he looks at him and he says, "But only if you pick it up." And he walks away. And he's like, you don't have to pick up these heavy things. Then it's not heavy. And these nice ways of teaching. And, my teacher, one of the greatest teachings my own teacher gave me was with regards to patience. So I was practicing very hard, getting some good results, but they weren't consistent. So I'd get some very good results, but then I'd get grumpy moods, dark moods. And it was because in a way I was trying too hard. So craving for jhanas, craving for arahantship, craving to be Buddha, whatever. And it can go that you want the best, and then you get some good results with a lot of willfulness, but then the result is, if you've been practicing with craving, is actually making more karma with craving, and craving can flip, and it can become irritation, aversion, anger, disappointment, despair. So I remember asking him, I just had a really good period of practice which seemed to fall apart. I was about 25 at the time and fell to my knees, and I asked him, when will it ever get any better? And I wanted him to say, next week or in a month. And he looked at me and he said, in 5 years, it'll be a little bit better. And it was just like, huh? And then he said, and in 10 years, it'll be even better. Which is not what you want to hear when you're an inspired, determined, willful 25-year-old. But it was the perfect teaching. It's like, slow down. Doesn't mean you don't continue to make the effort, but you do it with less of an agenda, less time frame, and then it becomes sustainable, something that you just do because it's the right thing to do, and the results will come when the results come.
So you said the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. The right thing to do and a goal. What is the difference?
In a goal?
A goal.
Yeah, so you have your ultimate goal is to realize Nibbana, and then the right thing to do is to practice towards that. So you simply do it because it's our duty as a Buddhist, or our duty to ourselves, to realize our ultimate potential, to eradicate suffering. But it's a long-term goal for most people. So obviously in the time of Lord Buddha, people had much past practice from previous lives. They got very good results quite fast, many people. And 2,600 years later, people have different levels of accumulated parami and qualities and merit. So it's for most people, it's working on that foundation towards that goal. And then there are benefits, obviously there are benefits to practice in one's daily life anyway, and then the benefits get greater and greater the more you practice. So, I mean, it's good to have a presence of mind and to be less reactive and to have a greater sense of well-being. All of that is good. That adds to your quality of life. But then understanding that those qualities deepen and deepen and will eventually uproot greed, hatred and delusion, and the mind will be liberated. That's an inspiring goal. Did you want to say anything like that? Did you want to share anything? As someone who worked in daily life for many years. Ajahn, can I give Ajahn Pavro a chance to say something? As somebody who was a professor at university for many years, and he might have some insights about daily practice in a work environment. I don't have so much experience with that. I became a monk when I was quite young. So he had a career and a family and then became a monk. So
one of the things that comes to mind quickly is the value of right association. Having friends who have a similar mindset and similar values, and have their own commitment to practice and to generating an ethical quality of life, so that your conversations with one another are affirming of your shared values, and you see each other as people equally on the path. So working in a company like this, where there are probably some expectations about your moral behavior, for instance, and also supports given to practice and visiting with monks when we happen to be here and that kind of thing. This is a product of your own merit, and it's meritorious to see its value and to affirm its value by taking good advantage of these conditions. So you value one another and respect one another, and see one another as people on the path, supporting one another in this endeavor. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Ajahn Achalo is always stressing the value of daily practice, and it's hard to overstress the importance of this, actually, because the subtleties of the Buddhist path only become evident when our own skills of attention are refined, become refined through daily life. It makes us able to bear the difficulties of life, the difficulties of living with people who have hindrances, families, family members, bosses who we think place unfair expectations on us from time to time. Whatever it is, we become people with broader shoulders and stronger backs, able to bear with life as it just unfolds from one day to the next. It's important too to take regular stock of the value of the path, and to value our own commitment to it. This is the kind of thing I would do late at night, say before I go to sleep or something, because however busy you are, however many times the cell phone goes off in the day, there will be a time tonight when you're laying in bed and there are no expectations on you. You're just laying there with your eyes closed, and you do have, unless you fall asleep in a matter of seconds, and I don't think that's a very common case, you do have a few moments to reflect. It's a very good time to generate some metta for oneself, one's family, one's colleagues perhaps, and also to look over the day and to see where, maybe to acknowledge places where you have not been at your best. You're a little bit impatient with a colleague, or you behaved in a way which you knew you could do better. So we see these things and acknowledge them. But more to the point here is to see where the path, your commitment to practice, where it actually has borne some fruit. It's appreciation, gratitude are extremely healthy spiritual emotions, and they, among other things, they lead to very pleasant sleep too. Just to fall asleep with an appreciative attitude. Appreciation for you can enumerate the conditions perhaps, but in a sense there's just gratitude for life. You have the opportunity as a living being, and you live in this country that supports Buddhism to such a degree, etc., but you have this opportunity as a living being with some modicum of a right view that you're holding and practicing with. You have this opportunity to one day become liberated. And as we sometimes, I think Ajahn Achalo was mentioning yesterday, There was a lifetime when the Buddha was probably in a much more difficult state than we've ever found ourselves in this life, suffering and reacting with in maybe very, very unskillful ways, thousands and millions of lifetimes before he became the awakened one, of course. But we just need to recognize that just having the capacity to attend and to respond with appreciation, to kindness, to be generous in some small way to our children, to a passing dog, to just these small events, these minuscule particles of a life of experience as each day goes by. This capacity in a human being is so marvelous and so worthy of appreciation and respect. So the cultivation of gratitude is one of the marks, I think, of a spiritual life as it's unfolding. We're all subject to the constraints of being selves and feeling like bounded cells with our own desires, our own needs, and we're never fulfilled, and people are mean to us, and so on and so forth. We get very constricted with these kinds of thoughts. Gratitude turns that over completely, opens up the heart, and takes us away from this self-preoccupation, which is so often the stuff of our days. So cultivate ways of considering the importance of appreciation and gratitude, and we become so much easier to live with too, both for ourselves and for others. We have to go? Okay, we're going somewhere.
I have a blessed small Buddha image that my teacher blessed with his metta. So, nice protective thing to have. If you didn't get one yet, you can come and get one. Ajahn Paro's bringing to me.